Hey everyone, how's it going? So I wanted to talk about something that I do believe is actually going to happen here for season 4, and that is a post-credit scene. Because if you're looking at the history of The Walking Dead and their series ending, there's usually always some type of post-credit scene or ending that teases the future. And so I do want to talk about what that likely could be here. And I do think that the one thing that I'm going to talk about specifically will actually happen. So yeah, before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all of my Walking Dead content like this. Now, season 4 is going to be airing at some point next year. I will say that based off of filming, they've been done for a couple of weeks now. I don't know if they're going to hold off until next September. I think they could have this show coming out in the spring. Just because Dead City Season 3 is filming right now, and they're supposed to be filming early into next year. And so I'm just thinking that it makes some sense that maybe Season 4 airs in the spring, and then Season 3 of Dead City airs in the fall. Because, unless they hold off on Dead City until early 2027, which would be, I think, a really big mistake, because everyone kind of forgot about Dead City Season 2 because it took 2 years to come out, right? So if you're doing the same thing with season 3, you got to help that show out a little bit. Like, you have to have that show coming out every single year. But I do think that once we actually get this show, we will get a post-credit scene that will tease the future of The Walking Dead, because right now we are kind of in a place where the future, I think, of this franchise is going to be, I think, really interesting. And this show is ending. Dead City is likely going to be ending in the next season or two. So what's happening after that? There's nothing else. There's no way AMC's just going to be done with The Walking Dead at that point. Yep, we're done. No more Walking Dead stuff, right? It's a franchise that they have that they're able to tell so many stories with. AMC literally just did a press event or whatever it was at, it was in October anyways, where they kind of talked about the future, and they were celebrating 15 years and talking about, what the next 15 years could be like. So whatever they're going to be doing next here, I do think obviously will be announced, or they will tease it at the end of this show, because out of the two shows, this show is the main show, right? So I do think that we're likely going to get some sort of post-credit scene here. If you're looking at the history of The Walking Dead, almost all of the shows have ended, with a post-credit scene, or at least the shows that really matter for the most part, right? You have to ignore Fear the Walking Dead, because that show is just kind of a spin-off. Tales of the Walking Dead as well, just because that's really an anthology series. It has nothing to do with, an overall storyline that connects with anything else. But The Walking Dead ended with Rick and Michonne, obviously, there at the very end. It's not necessarily a post-credit scene, but it was teasing the ones who live and the future. You got to see where Michonne was. It was kind of a cliffhanger because she was out there looking for Rick. You saw Rick there, obviously, with the CRM. He got captured. So that happened. And also with World Beyond Season 2, when that show ended, you had a post-credit scene where we saw literally the future of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, right? Where you see that variant Walker for the first time. And so when you're looking at all of that, it makes sense that there is going to be something here that does tease the future of The Walking Dead. And so I do think it comes down to two possibilities here. And I want to talk about these two, scenarios here in which a post-credit scene could happen. The first is Rick Grimes' return. It could be something that literally is just at the end, because obviously people want to see Rick and Daryl reunite. I think this would be a really cool way to announce this. Don't even do it at Comic-Con or anything like that. Do it at the very end of this show where you're building up this whole story. Maybe, it ends with Daryl finally making it back to America. He gets on his motorcycle and then starts riding off in this direction. Maybe he's going to the Commonwealth or Alexandria. And then all of a sudden it fades to black, and then the credits roll. Then after the credits, you see Rick maybe there, right? There's something where he gets a call about something. Maybe it's oh, Daryl's here, or I don't know, something like that where it's teasing the future and okay, so there's going to be another spinoff and these characters are going to reunite. Or maybe if it's not Rick, it's another character. I think having something like that at the very end where it teases what's happening in the future, I think would be really exciting. Rick Grimes appearing here, I think would be absolutely incredible. I do think, and I really want to talk about this in a separate video where I just really go in depth on how much people want these characters to reunite, because I talk about it a lot. Obviously, it's kind of what everyone's waiting for. But when you're really watching just random videos on Rick and Daryl and their story, you read the comments and you see so many comments of people saying I cannot wait, we need this reunion. And I do think it's where The Walking Dead has to go next. I just, you always sort of have a feeling of well, the story should maybe go in this direction, or this character should return, or no, that story's done, or, it just makes sense that at this point now, we sort of told these spin-off stories where these characters had like downtime and you know what I mean? Like they've been on their own doing this and that. I think bring everyone back now. It's been a while, right? I think you can do it. And Rick appearing at the very end in a post-credit scene, I mean, maybe it's something where it's just on a radio, or maybe he's literally just like, you know, at Alexandria or something like that, you know, doing a supply run. Maybe he's in a helicopter. Like, I don't know what it would be, but something, you know, with Rick Grimes at the end, a post-credit scene with him would be the most exciting way I feel like to tease the future of The Walking Dead and all of them reuniting, right? Now, the one thing that you do have to think about when it comes to, you know, the characters, I guess, going back to Alexandria or the Commonwealth is the sets, right? They took pretty much everything down for the most part from when they were filming The Walking Dead, and I don't think they rebuilt anything for season 4. Like, I would have seen something, someone would have tagged me in this or that, you know, regarding filming. So I'm assuming that what this is likely going to be is maybe it's a random scene where it's a building where it kind of looks like the Commonwealth. It's likely not going to be Alexandria, but I still think, just, you know, my own predictions on this, I do believe that it's going to be something where it's implied that Daryl is going back to the Commonwealth or Alexandria. Most likely the Commonwealth, because he's probably assuming that that's where Judith and RJ and everyone are at, right? And Laurent as well. I think he's going to want to really know, like, is Laurent there? And that's also one thing too, like with this ending, is Laurent going to show up in the very last moments? Like if he's there and he's at the Commonwealth, I imagine Judith and RJ are going to be there as well. So I'm kind of like wondering how a lot of this is going to play out. That's kind of why I wonder if maybe Laurent doesn't show up at all. And it's something where it's implied that Daryl's on his way there. This way they can do a post-credit scene with Rick or something else. We'll talk about it in a second. But that kind of sets up the future, right? Now, I think another idea for a post-credit scene, and this most likely is something that is going to happen, and that is the variant walkers being in America. The reason why I think it's most likely going to happen is because it does seem like they could be returning for season 4. And that is something that would sort of mirror the past, right? Like if you're looking at World Beyond's post-credit scene, that sort of teased the future and variant walkers just being a thing in general, right? Like in France. And then we see Daryl obviously going back to America. Now he brings the variant walkers back. And now the variant walkers are in America. And I think it would be a really cool scene if, you know, if it plays out very similar to how I was saying before. Daryl, you know, just rides off on a motorcycle or whatever. It fades to black and then the credits roll. And then it cuts to like, maybe it's just a walker just kind of walking in the woods or like on the side of a road. And then it just kind of starts to animate or like, you know what I mean, starts to run a little bit. Or I don't know how they would do it. Maybe you see some survivors there, someone dies or whatever, but then they turn and they're a variant walker. I think that would be a really cool way to end this because it's something that is just like variant walkers are now here in America. And that is terrifying because things could totally change, right? I feel like when you're just looking at The Walking Dead as a whole, like everything's kind of dying down or it feels like it, right? Obviously, they do want to create like a lot of excitement for the franchise and obviously make things really exciting again. I think this is the best way to do it is end this story and then have that just be that. And then all of a sudden, you know, have the tease that variant walkers are now in America. And what does that mean for everyone? Like that would completely, honestly change everything. Because imagine if everything got destroyed again, right? I think that's the issue right now is with The Walking Dead. They really do just kind of tell like these really dramatic stories with other characters. But like in terms of the apocalypse, there's been no real change for a while. But imagine if variant walkers show up and they start to actually destroy a lot of these communities, like say Alexandria is completely gone or the Commonwealth. I think you could do something like that, honestly, because you still have the CRM and maybe they're all traveling there because obviously they're, you know, very safe there and it's a whole city. But variant walkers would change so much. And then you have like a whole other story here and everything changes. Everything becomes way more exciting. The world feels very scary. And like, how is everyone going to survive? Andrew Lincoln talked about bringing everything back to bare bones and like survival and everything. This is the way to do it. In my opinion, this is exactly the way to do it here is you do something like this. Again, I do think that as a post-credits, you know, the two options I mentioned here with Rick Grimes appearing or variant walkers being in America, I think this is the most likely option. I just think it makes a lot of sense because you also want Rick to see variant walkers and have a story there. So I just think it's perfect. And this is really where I see The Walking Dead going. Anyways, I'm going to leave it here, so definitely post all of your thoughts down below on what you think could happen at the end of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon and the future of The Walking Dead. Do you think there will be a post-credit scene? Personally, I do think there will be one, because this is going to be the final season. Everyone's going to be watching this. Like, the ratings will go up a little bit for this, I imagine. It's probably not going to go up too crazy, but like, it's the final season. There's always sort of, like, ratings usually increase for the most part. So I do think there will be a lot of excitement here just to see how this story ends and the connections to America and everything. And yeah, I'm excited to see just what they do here. But like, if this show is over and that's it, and then Dead City, has another season or two, like, they have to build excitement, right? I think having a post-credit scene there, announcing something for the future, that's exactly what they're going to do, because AMC has always done that with The Walking Dead, and I just think that it makes the most sense. That's my prediction, or at least these are my two predictions, is that Rick is going to appear. There's going to be some connection to Rick in a post-credit scene, and if it's not that, it's going to be variant walkers are now in America. But definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.